Hello, my name is Paula Morgenstern. I'm from BAM Construct, and I've got a question for Exeter Council. Really interesting project. I was interested, were you able to combine your CapEx and your OpEx into one budget for this project? It sounded very much like you're looking at operational costs as part of the capital investment as well. Maybe you can tell us more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're building very high-performing leisure facilities, or homes for that matter, often there is a slight capital premium for that. That is certainly offset through the life cycle cost benefits, so not just in terms of the higher quality materials that we're using for the envelope of the building, but also in the energy savings. So what we were able to show at feasibility scheme stage, where we modelled a building reg compliant leisure centre alongside a Passivhaus one, was that the operational savings of adopting the Passivhaus approach from day one meant that we could justify doubling the size of the building and providing a much more cost-effective solution. So yes, we're probably paying a 10% premium for having a high-performing building. That's not just Passivhaus, that also includes the fact that it's building biology compliant to IBM 2015, and also it's just a little extra climate resilient to 2080.
Great. Any further questions in the audience? So, gentleman on the right, and then I'll come over to the left.
Thank you for some excellent presentations there. Good spectrum. My name's Chris Twin. I'm with the Sustainable Development Foundation. Question for Thomas. You talk eloquently about how a high-density apartment has less envelope area, a sixth compared with a detached. But of course, within the block, there are rooms which have got 2 and 3 surfaces, not just the one. Do you end up varying the U values and so forth to try and better match internal heat gains in those particular spaces, or just use a uniform value across the whole of the development?
Yeah, that's a good question. So typically we're using a uniform U value because it's just simpler for manufacturing and so forth, as you understand. The architect has this kind of varying wedges of varying thickness in the facade. So the facade has this kind of beveled effect as you go around the envelope. So some parts of the wall have more insulation than others. But typically what we're doing is we're using a uniform U value for the entire envelope. Now I will say we're always worried about, let's say, southwest corner facing apartments. So we'll often isolate an apartment which is maybe risk of being cold or risk of being too hot, and we'll do an isolated study of that to make sure, you know, that we don't have a kind of an overheating or if it's just not too cool or too hot. But effectively in a building like this, you're really using a uniform U value throughout, because that's the most cost-effective way that we found anyway. Thank you for your question.
Great. And there was a question on the side here.
Great presentations. Just a quick questions on overheating. So with this air tightness, there are higher chances to incur on overheating. So how have you tackled that?
Anne-Marie, do you want to start, as you haven't answered?
Hi, sorry. Yeah, thanks for the question. I mean, I think it's quite a common myth that the greater air tightness can cause other problems such as overheating, when actually I think the greater air tightness approach needs to have more sensible glazing ratios. So as Thomas said, if you compare the Agar Block A project at 7 stories and 6 stories with, I think, was it 26 stories in New York. Obviously New York has a far more extreme climate, but as Thomas said, I mean, our glazing ratios need to be reassessed and revisited, and we've moved away from the 1980s passive solar 90% glazed building envelope to the south. We actually need to move towards far more conservative 25 to 30%, and even some experts in the UK would say 30% is too much to have on a south facade in terms of glazing, and Block A has probably about that amount on that facade. So there is a little bit of having to address that in design development going forward.
And just a slightly different...
Sorry, related to... Yeah, in relation to air tightness, you feel sensitivities like solar gain far more quickly because there isn't that air leakage and infiltration. So it's a real push back on the designers, I think, to really design intelligently. And
just a slightly different take. So, I mean, this is modelled within PHPP, the Passivhaus planning package. This is modelled automatically and something you have to address, so the problem can arise. Thomas, do you want to just explain how you've dealt it in New York?
Yeah, so in the UK and Ireland, we're very lucky that in the summertime, the night-time temperatures are quite low, so we can actually run the ventilation system in what we call a bypass mode. So instead of the fresh air being heated by the exhaust air, we can actually just deliver the fresh air, at 15, 16, 13 degrees, whatever it is, to the living spaces. So in the UK and Ireland, we really have no excuse for overheating passive houses. That's different in New York City. In July and August, you have 90 degree Fahrenheit and you have 90% outdoor humidity. So you can't open the windows to cool a passive house building in New York, whereas you can. I live in a passive house building since 2004. My house is a passive house building. We sleep with the windows open from April until October. So, if a window has a handle on it, you can open it. It's not illegal. And the Passive House police have never sort of come to my house yet. So don't worry about overheating. If it's well designed, it won't be a problem.
But the point is you have to do it within the Passivhaus planning package. You have to address the overheating risk.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it is automatically, and hence ending up at the glazing ratios that we've been talking about. Is there one final question? The gentleman on the right over here. Sorry, he went first, I'm afraid.
Yes, hi, really good presentations, very interesting. Just on the leisure centre, you mentioned building biology. Was there one reason why you went for that rather than well or fit well or some of the other health metrics?
I think a bit like Passivhaus, we wanted something that was more than a tick box exercise. When we considered the other accreditation routes, a lot of it relied on us having to control the operator and the users. So, for example, restricting the sale of fizzy drinks, chocolate snacks, and the like. And there was a concern that element was something that couldn't be within our control, and there was a bit of resistance politically for us to be entering into something that then would relate to us becoming kind of the food police. Typically, most people who go to swimming sessions are quite keen to have chips afterwards or an unhealthy snack. So I guess that's why we were more attracted to the German Baubiology 2015 standard, which was much more focused on the fabric of the building and the internal environment, as opposed to some of the operational aspects. Also, a lot of the other accreditation schemes are pretty expensive.
Tomas.
Yeah, Emma, I just want to pay you a compliment, because when I was a young boy learning how to swim, I don't know how your experience was, but you could never see out the windows of the swimming pool hall because they're always covered in condensation. So you always felt very removed from the outdoor environment. And when you went to change in the changing room, you were absolutely perishing because of and you didn't want to be in the pool in the first place because it was so full of chlorine. So I hope I can get the opportunity to swim in your leisure centre, and I congratulate you.
It's an open invitation to everyone. You've got
great project, really exciting.
18 months to get body beautiful.
Oh, geez, no pressure.
Fantastic. So we've had a great spread of speakers, guys, with the leisure centre, 20-plus story tower, and the Agar Grove is one of the biggest social housing projects in the UK. Feel free to come up and talk to us afterwards if you've got projects that you want to talk about. But if you could just give the speakers a round of applause to say thank you, that would be fantastic.